Welcome to another Peter Moon podcast featuring the music of Mermaid Toes, formerly known as Noosa.
He doesn't like to work on Sundays, but he let himself get sucked in. He didn't get to bed till 3 a.m., but he's glad that he helped a friend. He was suddenly awoken by the gardener too early this morning. Put a pillow to his head, but the motor still burned his brain. He needs some strong coffee to help him get through the day. He needs some strong coffee to help him get through the day.
This is Peter Moon podcast number 9. It's the first podcast I've done in a couple of years. The previous podcast, the last one with David Anderson, they were discontinued because the subsequent one we did with a time traveler, Maya Leibowitz, the static was so bad that we just stopped and it never got going again. But today we have a very special interview that concerns some of the issues that have taken place in the town of East Hampton. And for those of you who are not familiar with the eastern end of Long Island, Montauk and Camp Hero are both located within the boundaries of the town of East Hampton. Camp Hero being assigned to the state of New York. Now, today's guest is a friend of mine for 24 years. I met him on August 12, 1993. Joe Lafreno. Hello, Joe. Thank you for being here.
Hello, Peter. Thank you for having me.
All right. Why don't we start by you telling us why I wanted to do this podcast with you?
Well, I had mentioned and I put a picture of a receipt that I had gotten from the town of East Hampton. I will be driving taxis part-time this summer. Extra money. It's a nice way to meet people, and they really need our services out here. So my daughter's driving for them and for a taxi company, and she convinced me that it was the right thing to do also. So there's a new permitting process out here. It's called, I believe they're calling it East Hampton Town Taxi Permits, where the drivers actually have to get permits, not just the companies anymore from the town. And, I asked them, and basically I interrogated them because they're not giving me any answers, and I still haven't gotten any, of why we need to pay for money to the town. What is the town doing for the money, and where is the money going? I'm getting no answers. I went to a town board meeting, interrogated them some more, and the only thing I had gotten from them was, you're not going to like the answer. Finally, they gave me the answer of where it's going, and they said the general fund. Well,
Okay. So let me interrupt you, Joe, and just give a little context to the audience. Is that we're talking about the town of East Hampton, and all he wants to do is get a permit to drive a taxi. Now, previously, it was the company that had the license. Now the individual taxi driver has to get it, correct?
Yes.
And you're doing this for a particular company. You and your daughter will work for a particular company?
Correct, yes.
Do you wish to name the company?
No, I'd rather not, because I don't want them involved in, the company itself that has not been into the system, into the I should say, into the town hall to speak or anything like that. So
we'll keep them out of it.
Yeah.
But so anyway, do you know if there's any ordinance in the town of East Hampton that states this, or is it an arbitrary rule?
No, the town came up with a new law. It was a unanimous vote, I guess, amongst the town board members to come up with this way to make the town extra money, because it is going to the general fund, and as you know, out of the general fund, the money could be dispersed anywhere. And I'm figuring that there's going to be about 1,000 drivers getting licensed. And funny enough, if you think it's funny, there was an ex-town board member there the same day I was speaking at the town board, and he was asking for $100,000 for a bluefish survey. I'm figuring $100 per driver times 1,000 drivers is exactly $100,000. So basically, If it's not going to that survey, what happens with these types of things, from what I've seen in the past, is the town grabs money from the taxpayers or from permits or whatever they want to do. They put it in the general fund. Then they give it to somebody to come up with some BS survey, which could consist of a piece of paper, and then $100,000 for a piece of paper for a survey that may or may not have ever even taken place. I mean, I have no idea how somebody's supposed to get a survey on a bluefish. But anyway, it's $100,000. Coincidentally, the same amount of money they're probably going to be collecting from us. That money goes to that person, and that person probably, as I understand corruption, unfortunately, because I've been living in this town so long, probably goes back in a big circle, and it comes back to the political campaign of these people that are running for office to get them reelected, so they could take some more money from us, steal some more money from us, to give it back to another person, to have it come back around again and give the money right back to them. This is disgusting, but this is how a corrupt government works, and I believe that East Hampton Town, we got rid of Bill McGinty, and I think at the end of his term there was $28 million missing that still has been not accounted for, and nobody went to jail for that. Budget director was arrested on I believe it was 14 different felonies. And I think there was a $200 bail set on him, which I don't believe he even did any community service for any of that. So
Was he found guilty? He was arrested, but was he tried and found guilty?
No, I believe he made deals in the end. I don't, if he was found guilty, I don't believe it ever made any papers or anything, but it's all about deals and deal making and who you know, and, that kind of thing.
Okay, Joe, this is, I know you've kind of had an inside look into East Hampton politics, but I want to stress to the listening audience that the town of East Hampton is once again the town that has jurisdiction over Montauk. And
So we tried to incorporate it one time, but there's too much rebellion from the inside townies that live in Montauk. And we never were able to get the incorporation. We've tried it a few times to make our Montauk our own little village, but there's just too much. Montauk is a big money pot for East Hampton, because East Hampton itself has no business district. So all of the business, they have the village, but that's an incorporated village. So very little of that money comes back to East Hampton town. So they rely on Montauk for the business district, and so they basically use us. That's all they're doing. Now what I see happening, and it's not just in Montauk, it's happening throughout the entire Suffolk County, probably Nassau County too, is because they've hammered these DUIs so much that they don't, they've made the fines and the repercussions for getting DUIs so intense that they're not getting the number of DUIs they used to, and DUIs are big money, for the fines and for the penalties and jail time, and it's big money for law enforcement. It's big money for the county in general. So now they're not getting that. They have to get the money from somewhere. So now they're attacking the taxi drivers. It's my opinion, but they got to get the money somewhere, and I believe it's all tied into this whole red light camera scam that they've been pulling in Suffolk County, where they shorten the yellow lights to go red. And unfortunately, what's happening is with that one is people are getting caught in the crosswalks because the lights are changing so fast, and they're getting run over by cars. So I'm calling that scheme that they've been pulling. It's basically murder for profit with the red light cameras. And that's eventually going to get out here also. If they could pull a fast one on us, they will. And that's the way these corrupt politicians are operating.
Well, I also want to mention here that I know you've worked in the security industry, and you have a good eye for these things. You always have. But one of the things I want to suggest is that we want to put up a website of some sort, a politically referenced or referential website of a timeline and issues, like putting names up and getting people to come and, report. Now, we're going to do this with the John Ford case, which I'll mention in a bit. But you can get a free website on Google and just put up a timeline of time, place, form, and event of who was involved, like this character in that was the budget director. And this is like putting a sort of the figuratively putting his head in a stockade publicly by letting it known who this person is and who the people who didn't prosecute them.
Oh yeah, well it wasn't all the papers here, and
yes, but the papers get thrown away and they get forgotten. We put up a dedicated website to corruption in East Hampton. Do you understand what I'm saying?
That's a fantastic idea.
And maybe even a Facebook page. And you see, but we have a timeline. It's very important to name the time, place, form, and event. And I also intend to get reporter Jerry Samisi involved in this. Jerry Samisi used to report for Dan's papers. Okay? He was a reporter. He covered the Flight 800 fiasco. He covered the John Ford fiasco. And he's a very diligent, honest reporter. And finally, some of the papers out further up island, as they say here, is they didn't want him to do any serious journalism. They wanted fluff pieces because he would start making questions about the school boards and corruption in the school boards and the funding. And they didn't want that. So it's like, this is like a grassroots agenda here. And of course, I know that you've worked deeply involved with the Republican Party, correct?
Yes, I was involved with them at one point. I haven't been involved at all since 2007, though.
Well, yes.
McGinty was on his way out, and I felt I had accomplished my mission, which was to get rid of him.
McGinty, would you just state clearly who McGinty is? Because many people won't know.
We had a really bad person here in East Hampton town. His name was Bill McGinty. He was the town supervisor, and he was going for his third term. He almost finished his third term, actually. And from what I'm remembering in the headlines, basically he was forced to resign 6 months before his term was up. It was either resign or go to jail, I think was the deal that he had made. And the budget, like I say, his budget director took the rap and took the fall for most of what was going on here in the town. And I remember him specifically telling me when I specifically asked him about the money, where the money was. I remember him saying to me, "Joe, I can guarantee you," and this is at a public meeting, it's on camera, it's on tape. He says, "Joe, I can guarantee you the money is going where it's supposed to go." Well, yeah, later on we figured out there was $28 million missing. Yeah, I'd still like to know where the money went. But, he told me so confidently that it was going where it was supposed to go. We also had to change it's called the CPF law, which was the Community Preservation Fund law, because the money wasn't going where it was supposed to go. The money was going into all kinds of places where it wasn't supposed to go. And after intense investigation by the county and by the state, they actually had to change the law to make it more tighter for this money to be accounted for. Like I said, there was 20 million missing. I had calculated there was going to be about 15 million, so I was even off on my calculations. It was almost double what I had calculated that was going to be unaccounted for when it was done. So when it was all done, so
well, there is
that was why we called him Wild Bill McGinty, and believe it or not, he still lives in this town and walks around with his head up held high, because he hasn't spent one day in jail, and there was no repercussions for what had happened under his administration. So
was he a Democrat or Republican?
He was a Democrat. I'm sorry, yeah, he was a Democrat. He had come to the Republican Party, I think, before we wouldn't take him. I wasn't even involved at the time, but the party wouldn't take him as a candidate, and then he asked the Democrats, and the Democrats took him, and I think well, I guess the ones that if they were stuff in their pockets, I don't know who actually wound up with that 28 million or actually where it went, but I guess there are some probably happy ones out there that he was in office, but I would say the majority of them feel that he was a disgrace.
Well, it went where it was supposed to go, according to where they thought it was supposed to go. But I want to, we can go deeper into some of the issues. And I don't know that I've ever discussed these with you per se, because we've generally been on other tangents when we've worked together. But when I want you to go in and just kind of regurgitate what you said already. Now, you went in to get your taxi permit as an individual
Right.
taxi driver, and you encountered a particular lady, right?
Yes. Like, well, what it was what they're doing with us now is they're forcing us to get fingerprinted by a company in well, Riverhead is one of the places. There's a bunch of locations, but it's a national fingerprinting company, and it costs $87, and we pay for that out of our pockets, and then they send the report back to the town of East Hampton, and the report basically, it tells them our criminal record or our criminal history if we have any, with DUIs and whatever else, I guess. And then that's it. They have a one-time report, and I did that over a month ago with my daughter. It took her about, I think, 10 days total from the time she had done the fingerprints. They sent them to the town, and she was called, oh, your pictured ID is ready for your permit. So she went and picked it up. Funny thing, sick, disgusting thing, actually. When she went to put her paperwork in, the fine or the fee was $200 to get the permit. Now, after me and my daughter went to the town and fought with them, we got it lowered to $100. So they, at that point, owed her $100. At the town meeting, you can clearly hear, and it's again all on tape. You can clearly hear the town clerk saying that we're going to have to put in some kind of a requisition to get our money back. If we paid $200, we're going to have to put in a requisition to get the other $100 back because the town deposits the money immediately, and we're going to have to write you out a check, and we don't know how long that's exactly going to take. And I said, yes, that's the way it works. This is political. We gave you cash, but you give us back a check, and you give it back to us when you feel like it. I understand, is what I told them. Well, when my daughter got the call to have her to pick up her license, the town clerk said, yes, your taxi permit is ready, and so is your $100 refund. And my daughter said, well, I thought I had to fill out paperwork in order to get that $100 back. And she said, oh, no. She said, your money's here. We never deposited it. And that was about 10 days after she had paid them. Now, I ask you, since when does a government building or a government office keep cash on hand that people are giving them 10 days prior? You're supposed to make deposits every night or at the end of every business day. The money's supposed to be accounted for. She gave her back her $100 cash. My daughter looked at the $100 and said, Dad, it was folded the same way I gave it. She said, this is the same money, Dad. I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, how could this be? You're supposed to make deposits. You're supposed to have accountability for where the money's going. Well, just the other day I went into the town and I gave them $100 cash. I didn't have my checkbook with me, and for whatever reason, I said, well, I have all the paperwork filled out. I just went to the bank, got the thing notarized. I have $100 on me. So I went in there and I went to give it to one of the clerk's assistants. Everything was going fine, and I said at the end of the transaction, could you give me a receipt? She said, oh, we don't give receipts. I said to her, but I had just given you $100 cash. I said, when someone gives you cash, you're supposed to give them a receipt as received the funds. She said, we don't do that here. We're not giving you any receipt. And I said, well, if you're not going to give me the receipt, then give me back my money. So she throws me over the counter, literally throws it at me, my taxi driver application and the money. So I pushed it back over the counter at her, and I said, hey, I'm not taking this thing back. I need to get the license because I don't want to get pulled over without having the license. I said, take the money, take the application. If you don't want to take the money, that's fine. Then process my application without the money. But give me a receipt. I said, this is a government facility. This is a government building. You have to give me a receipt for the money that you're taking from me. I said, otherwise, how do I know that it's even being accounted for? So I'm, making a stink there at the front desk, and then of course the town clerk came from around the back. She heard my voice and she said, Mr. Lafreno, she says, we don't give receipts when people give us money. And I said, well, you're going to give me a receipt. And she says, so she yelled at the town worker. She said, just scratch something out on any old piece of paper. Give him the receipt he wants just to get him out of here. And so she did. That is the piece of paper that I put on my Facebook wall. On the piece of paper, it actually says the word "got."
Right, I intend to put that up
Yeah,
and post it, but
got.
with this, but let me say something. This sort of behavior that you're describing was very typical of the Montauk Project investigation. What in the early years when we'd ask questions and you get these very strange, off-the-wall answers, like why would somebody on Earth answer this way? When my wife saw the posting, and she's from Romania, she was not surprised at all because in third world countries, and including Romania, graft is very, very much a part of the scene, but she was very surprised to see it in America, which is not known to be so obvious. They're much more subtle in their corruption.
Oh no, these people are blazing. They believe, honestly, they believe they are above the law. They write the laws, so they think that they're above the laws. And McGinty wasn't above the law, but so we got Republicans then after McGinty. They cleaned up the town, they cleaned up the finances, they cleaned up the budget, they cleaned up everything. Now we got so that lasted for about 8 years. He was elected twice. His name was Bill Wilkinson. And then we got these guys in, and I've been out of politics, like I say, since 2007. And this is an awakening to me to realize that the level of corruption that was there when the McGinty administration was in, at least they were trying to hide it. They were shredding documents or whatever they were doing there, trying to hide it. These guys, I don't even believe they're trying to hide it. They're just literally taking your money from over the counter, and who knows what they're doing with it. But there's no accountability for it because there's no receipts, there's no record, there's no book with
Right.
numbers on it saying how much money is accounted for every single day. So if it's not accounted for, who knows where it goes?
Well, I think that we can plant some seeds here because there has to be some protocol for auditing the books, for
Right, I'm sure. Suffolk County might be interested in it.
Suffolk County
maybe
is
they won't.
probably interested in continuing it, and this is a very big issue, and I want to broaden what we're talking about. But before I do that, I just want to ask you very quickly, your daughter was making a big issue. I remember it on Facebook. I don't remember what the issue was. Was this the issue, or did she make another issue with the town?
No, this is what she was talking about. She was basically questioning where's the money going. We're giving you this money. You're saying that it's for that you need it for paperwork or whatever.
Right.
Well, they really couldn't come up with any kind of a reasoning. And of course, now I find out on tape again from the town supervisor at the public meeting that it's going into the general fund. Well, obviously, if it was for the taxi program like you're claiming that you first needed it for, then it would be going into the general fund to be paying for electricity and and buying plants or whatever. This is not money that is necessary. And,
Right.
And as I heard from one of the other, I have the name of the person. I will reveal it if I need to. It was said right in front of my daughter. He said to me, "Well, Joe," he says, "we didn't think there'd be anybody complaining. We thought that taking $200 from the taxi drivers would be easy money for us." That's exactly what he said. And he said, "We figured you guys could afford it." That's what he said to us. So he's targeting one sector of society, one working class sector of society, because you can. The way they look at us is that we're uneducated. They feel the majority of taxi drivers don't have college educations, and that we won't fight back. Well, they were wrong. Me and my daughter, we did fight back. We did get it lowered, and I'm not done. And I'm not done with these people yet. I mean, if you stand by and let corruption happen at any level, and you know what's going on, there is no stopping it. Today it's $100. Then I call it a fine that they're fining us for working. Tomorrow, maybe next season, it'll be 200, and they could just keep upping it because there's nobody challenging them.
Well, this is. Let me interrupt you, Joe. Let me interrupt you because I want to broaden the context of this. And
Sure.
you see, when I first, found out that the town of East Hampton had jurisdiction over Montauk, when I was doing my Montauk investigation, and I had met the one of the town councilmen of East Hampton, a very nice man, Robert Cooper, who also happened to be he was designated as the tribal leader of the Montauk Indians. And in the New York Times, there was later I guess, two factions that developed, with Robert Farrow being the other one. But Bob Cooper was always very friendly to me, and he had been elected by going on TV and just saying, there's a lot of problems here. But I became friends with him, and he introduced me to the Montauk Shaman. He knew that that was the department I needed to work in or operate with as far as my investigation of Montauk. And what had happened with him is he was being sued in court because he had worked as a policeman in his prior career, and he was now the town councilman, and he said that there was a lot of issues with the Montauk police force, with the police themselves, and that they should be looked into, investigated. The response
I seem to remember something about that, and coincidentally, I believe he was the same councilman that was going against. I believe the investigation, from what I'm remembering, Bill McGinty at the time was, I think, just a regular cop or possibly a sergeant at the time, and he wanted to be lieutenant in the worst way.
In Montauk or East Hampton Town? What was the?
East Hampton Town is the police department that controls Montauk.
Same one. Okay.
Yeah, we don't have our own police department out here because we're not an incorporated village. We're in the township of East Hampton. But I believe, from what I remember in the story, how it goes is that Bill McGinty was supposed to testify or be at the town hall meeting, testify about some corruption. He made the deal with Bill Cooper that he was going to be there, and at the very end, he backed out, didn't show up or whatever, and Bill Cooper was left holding the bag without a witness to what he was talking about. And I think that because of that, it costed Bill his election. So I don't remember the exact details, but McGinty had something to do with that too. And
well, it might have cost him the election, but as far as the court went, I forget the police chief who sued him. It was like defamation of character and something like this.
You're talking about suing Bill Cooper.
Yeah, he was suing Bill Cooper, and I think his name was Scott. I don't remember the police chief, but I actually went to Brooklyn U.S. District Court, and I actually sat in on a hearing, and I heard the attorney for Robert Cooper, and I heard the attorney for the defense, or for the offense. His name was Vince Fontana. He worked for a very big law firm, and he was a very squirmy, very weird. I mean, he kept making these, objections, and they were so unprofessional. He would do anything he could, and the judge was Judge Gleason. I don't know Judge Gleason's first name, but he was the guy who prosecuted John Gotti, the judge. And I was told he got his appointment for doing such a good job on John Gotti. But Judge Gleason was so polite and so courteous to this attorney, just because it was his courtly demeanor to be that way. But he was outraged at the amount of money this was costing the town of East Hampton, because the town of East Hampton was paying for the prosecution of Bob Cooper. I don't know how this worked.
Yeah.
And he says it's costing the town of East Hampton money, and he wanted the litigation settled. And finally, the police chief had to drop his suit because it had no merit.
Yeah.
Bob Cooper ended up with a big legal bill that he got into a dispute with his attorney, and I guess who charged his homeowner's insurance or something. And without him,
I believe that whole thing destroyed Bob Cooper, and it was he was just the guy that was trying to clean up some corruption. I guess the corruption at the time did not want to get cleaned up. Now, I don't know of any corruption in East Hampton Town Police Department currently.
This is the history, and
this is going way back.
This is the history.
Currently, but as far as the town itself goes, with the public officials, well, I mean, there's just gigantic history of corruption there.
Well, but
And I
the
don't
point
think-
here.
I don't think any of these guys are clean at all. from
Yes.
what I saw at the town board meeting.
But this is the point. What you had in that instance, and there's more here that concerns Camp Hero. When you basically had the police, a police chief trying to punish a Montauk Indian. This is the bigger karmic issue of what was going on there. And this Native American, Robert Cooper, Montauk Indian, he was trying to clean up the corruption. And in any case, during this same time period, I also met an officer of the court who offhandedly told me that all of the drugs on the eastern seaboard, the majority of the drugs come in through Montauk. They would light fires on the beach, and these would be signals for boats to come in and bring the drugs in, talking about illegal drugs. And they told me that there were no prosecutions of drugs in Montauk or anywhere along that Montauk corridor that would extend to East Hampton. And the prosecutions went all the way down the eastern seaboard. You know, we're talking about New Jersey, down into, Delaware, Virginia. That'd be prosecuted there, but not at Montauk. So it was this is where the drugs were coming in. Now, at the same time, I had heard from this particular officer of the court, and it's not John Ford, by the way, that they buried atomic waste at Camp Hero, and there was atomic waste buried there. Now, another friend of mine who had connections to Montauk told me that atomic waste was from Bikini Atoll in, post-World War II atomic tests. And they needed to bury it, so they buried it at Camp Hero. Why they buried it there, I can't tell you. And it was supposedly buried right near the transmitter building. If you remember years ago when they were digging it up and they were removing they were doing an excavation there. They were supposedly cleaning up the base and get rid of some of the oil and toxic stuff. And I had gone out there one day with our common friend Corey and Preston and Nichols and Duncan Cameron. And we were in my car and we were, poking around Camp Hero, and we saw this dump truck come out of Camp Hero, and it was moving fast and it had no license plate. So I followed it through, Highway 27, Sunrise Highway, all the way through Montauk, and it was trying to lose us. When it got out of Montauk and onto the Napeague Strip towards Amagansett, it began to fire up to 70 miles an hour in a dump truck. It was going well over 70 because I was going 70 trying to keep up with it, and I wasn't quite keeping up with it. By the time it was trying to lose us, by the time it got to East Hampton, it had, I got in front of it and saw that it actually did have a license plate on the front. Therefore, it wasn't an illegal car. They didn't have to have one in the back, but it looked like an illegal truck. I wanted to follow it all the way to wherever it was going, but Corey had to, she couldn't spare the time. I had to take her home. So basically, I believe it went to Brookhaven Town, dump. Oh, I don't know where else they would have dumped it. Now, we subsequently found out in the John Ford case, following that John Powell, who was the most important Republican in Suffolk County and got Governor Pataki elected, he bragged of that, and there was no doubt that it was true because he was very powerful. He was later convicted of accepting bribes for allowing dumping in East Hampton, in Brookhaven Town, which is, for those who don't know, it looks like a mountain. When I remember seeing it, I was going out to Montauk with Preston, I go, what's that? What's that mountain? And he starts laughing. He says, that's the Brookhaven Town dump. And
yeah, it's big and it's growing. It's still going.
Oh yeah, it's like Mount Doom, and it's like Mount Doom from Lord of the Rings. But anyway, so it seemed evident that this driver was doing something very not kosher, and he was trying to lose us. I don't know where else he would have taken that, and the assumption was that it was indeed atomic waste. So, see, one of the issues is that John Ford, who was for those who don't know, he was the head of the Long Island UFO Network, and he had Geiger counters, and he had some sort of log. I don't remember the exact details of the East Hampton or of the Brookhaven Town dump, and that was which some believe led to the investigation. Preston believed it had to do with the dumping as opposed to UFOs, because John Ford was investigating UFOs. There's both. In the John Ford case, there's illegal dumping and there's UFOs involvement, or his investigation of UFOs. So John Ford was treated very unfairly. He was accused of conspiring to kill John Powell, who was later convicted himself, by putting radium in his toothpaste. And
Wow.
this was ridiculous. And of course, it was on all the major news. They they accused him of having an arsenal. All these guns that he had were legally registered. And they, I think beat his dog in front of him. They did a lot of nasty things. They put him in jail. They drugged him. They rigged him with an attorney. They rigged the attorney who had later worked with or for John Powell. They were in cahoots and convinced John that he would lose his pension if he didn't cop a plea of insanity. And this was while he was being drugged. So John was declared incompetent by the court, and he's been in a Mid-Hudson Forensic Clinic, which used to be called Mid-Hudson for the Criminally Insane. This is axe murderers and people like that are in that facility. And he'd never harmed anyone. He was a loyal court officer for most of his life, and he was retired. But so he's still there. And this is a big issue we do on the Inception Radio Network. We do once a month with Bob Tarmac, and we do this show. And so the problem is we can't get a wedge to get him released. The attorney is not working in his best interest. And so this is why I'm broadening this whole issue with the town of East Hampton, because the town of East Hampton is the oldest town on Long Island. It goes back to the Parsons family and the Pynchon families that settled from Massachusetts. They came down from the Massachusetts Bay Colony back in the 1600s. And this is when East Hampton was settled. It was settled, Sag Harbor was settled, which was a whaling community, and then East Hampton. So these are very old connections that go way back, and a tremendous arrogance that goes with all of this. So I wanted to bring this to your attention, all of these issues, because it ties both directly and indirectly to the bigger issue of not only John Ford, but the Montauk project itself. Do you have anything to say, Joe?
Yeah, no, I could totally understand where you're going with this, and you're talking about the founders of this whole area, which I don't think that they would agree with what's happened. Obviously, to the little fishing village and to the farming village that we used to have, and we used to actually have cattle ranches out here and everything else. Now everything is, well, you can't do anything in East Hampton anymore. Everything's preserved, and everything is a sanctuary this and a sanctuary that. And so the only people that have rights out here anymore are the artists. They're the special people, and the working class out here is just treated like garbage. And of course, they're going after taxi drivers. And I think that conspiracy that you're talking about, I mean, you're talking about a guy, John Ford. Obviously, he was going to testify and be a witness against some very powerful people, and they figured out a way to silence him. That's not unlike the stuff that's going on right now in East Hampton town. People are threatened all the time, and they usually cower down, and they are silenced. I told Bill McGinty at the time, I had been writing letters to the editor. I had my own television show locally. I was on other local television shows, and I made it very public what was going on back then. And I told Bill McGinty, the only way that you're going to be able to silence me, Bill, is to kill me. I said, so if you're willing to kill me, then go ahead and do it. But I'm not going to stop until you're out of office. And that's exactly what I did. I kept hammering that guy until eventually the investigation through the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, the Major Crimes Division, investigated it, and they found that what I was saying was correct, and they did force him out of office eventually. So
We'll put up a blog, Joe. We'll put up a blog to get some activation. Contact our friends on Facebook that are connected to East Hampton.
Just so you know, and I started saying it earlier, you get rid of one slimy snake and another one rears its ugly head. The corruption will only be cleaned up temporarily. As soon as you lighten up on them, they keep coming up out of the ground like bugs, like an infestation of cockroaches. They can't stop. Their money is too easy for them. Crime is easy for them. They got rid of the mob, and only to become the mob themselves. And the reason they got rid of the mob is they don't like is that the town governments, the local governments, they don't like competition. So they get rid of the mobsters, and so now they're the only game on the block. So they could fine you, they could charge you, they could arrest you, they could do anything they want to you. There is nobody to stop them. It's so corrupt and so widespread, and it's destroying Long Island completely. I mean, we have no industry out here. All the working people are moving away. They're all selling and going down south. I mean, our only industry out here is tourism, and for some reason they're trying to destroy that also. So I don't know when it's all going to stop. Eventually, I'll probably wind up moving off of Long Island along with everybody else that left before me, because you don't have a life out here anymore. This is not freedom. This isn't. They don't even allow you to make an honest living without fining you and taxing you and permitting you literally to death. I mean, even the application is the most disgusting application to become a taxi driver in the town of East Hampton. They're asking you if you're a criminal, if you've ever been charged with child molestation or been accused of it. These are questions for if a person's convicted of a crime or being charged with a crime, not for filling out a work application or asking for a license. And I asked for those town officials, I said, when you became a town official and you people are writing these laws, have you ever been approached with a disgusting application like this? You're basically interrogating us, asking us if we're criminals, and disgusting types of criminals. Is that what you believe we are? All we're doing is making an honest living and taking DUIs off the road. And they, of course, cannot answer that question.
The question should simply be, is, are you a convicted felon? Do you have a criminal record?
The whole application process is illegal because in New York State, I believe as of 2010, they are not allowed to discriminate against somebody if they have been arrested and convicted of a crime. That's another form of this. It's a form of workplace discrimination.
Well, yes, but they might be wanting to hire them. If they say yes, they might want to be hiring them for something else.
Or maybe they want to hire them to be town officials if they say yes that they were convicted of crimes. Maybe they want them to run for public election.
Perhaps that's the case.
Yeah,
but
that's probably what's going on. That went right over my head. I forgot what's going on here. That's what they're doing. They're trying to recruit criminals like themselves. And
okay.
Yeah, no, I know. I try to make a joke out of it, but unfortunately, it's a very serious matter what we have going on in this town. And
let me allude to something else, Joe. Joe, let me just. I kind of want to end on another interesting issue, because we've had a lot of experiences that we've shared over the years. But one I want to bring up is just this one. Is that one time you had called me, and I came out to Montauk because you had found, and I wish I had pictures of this, but you had found mutilated deer right in the vicinity of the transmitter tower. Do you remember that?
Yes, yeah, that happens quite a bit out there. Unfortunately, there's I don't know if they call themselves Satanists or whatever. They come out and they do strange rituals in Montauk for some reason, and a lot of it happens out by the point also. Yeah.
But this deer, this particular deer, there were several deer that were kind of like, they looked really like they'd been irradiated, and they had hair growing out of their bones. They were decayed in a very peculiar fashion. But there was one deer with big antlers, and this was right in, it was within 70 yards of the transmitter building by those picnic tables, just to the northwest of the transmitter. And this deer was like spread eagle, like it had been dropped from a helicopter. Do you remember? That was the one.
I don't. Yeah, I remember there being some disgusting thing like that, and who knows how it got into the condition it was in. But
that was a classic.
Recently I found a rabbit out there right at the on one of the roads, and I took a picture. Actually, I sent it to you. I don't know if you got it.
I don't remember it. You might have sent it.
Oh, okay. I'll resend it to you. But it looks like this poor bunny rabbit had been almost like filleted, in his internal organs and everything were exposed, and he was just laying right in the middle of the road. But every once in a while, I'll find pentagrams out there, like demon worshiping type of stuff.
Pentagrams, you mean? Pentagrams.
Pentagrams. We have very sick people in Montauk. We have some very, very disturbed people. I don't know if they live here. I don't know if they visit here, but we have some very, very bizarre people that come out to Montauk for sure. I don't know why this place attracts them so much, but it does. That's where we're at.
Yes, and certainly it's not necessary. The Montauk Project story attracts some, but there's also, it was weird long before there was ever a book called The Montauk Project. So it was a very strange place. So anyway, this is, I want to thank you for your story and your contribution. Perhaps we'll do some more in the future, but certainly what you and I want to do is collaborate and set up a Facebook page and a website that gives a point of reference with the state's time, place, form of corruption, what wasn't done, what was done, so that people who live out there can, help, because this is, for the people who live out there with you. I live in Nassau County, which definitely has its problems, but I'm so happy that I live in this county and not Suffolk County, because the corruption there is far, far worse. And
I've never lived in Nassau County, so but it's widespread. In Suffolk County, I do know a lot about the corruption here because fortunately or unfortunately, this is where I live. And well, yes, it's been a pleasure talking to you also. And as far as setting up a web page or something like that, we could do it, and we could talk till we're blue in the face. We will have a very, very hard time getting people to come out of the woodwork to tell us what is going on. They don't want to be identified. I have two people right now that I know of. I was told by another taxi driver, one guy was refused his taxi license because he got a DUI 20 years ago. And the guy said, look, I've been driving a taxi for 15 years. Please don't take away my livelihood. They refused him. This guy won't even come out publicly and say what happened, why the town's refusing him for a crime from 20 years ago. So what do they expect the guy to do? Go on food stamps, be unemployed now for a mistake he made 20 years ago? Another guy has a business license, I believe for the last 12 years he has had a taxi company out here, and he doesn't even drive the taxis. He had DUIs, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago, and now they're saying, because of this new law that the town put through, they are saying you are not allowed to be in business anymore. Again, it's against New York State workers' laws. This is against the law that's been on the books, I believe, since 2010. You can't even discriminate against somebody if they have a criminal record. Not to mention, these people have paid their price to society. been convicted. They've paid their price. They are now free people.
All right.
Now the one guy, he doesn't even have a license. He just runs the business, and they're saying you can't even be in business because you committed a crime.
Well, we'll get to this, but the one thing we can do with this website is people can, you know, either post or send stuff to us we can put up, and it can be anonymous.
Yeah, that they see on the
It can be anonymous.
Or whatever.
It can be anonymous.
Right, they could do anonymous. That's the only way. Because I tell you, all those years that I was fighting the McGinty administration, I stood there alone most of the time. Very few people, if anybody, came to support me and support the cause. And the only way this guy actually got out of office, I remember reading one of the papers, it was like week after week I was going front page in the newspapers and with the TV show, and the district attorney's office finally got wind of that there's something wrong in East Hampton, and that's how the whole thing went down. But it wasn't because there was masses of people coming out and testifying, even people that had been personally hurt. They didn't care. They were so scared of the town. They were so afraid that they were going to hurt them more.
And under psychotronic influence, perhaps, of, you know, electromagnetic frequency. So this is all the paradigm, but this is a first avenue of not only defense but offense in getting the truth uncovered, and this is what we can do, and it's, you know, it'll give people a reference point, and we can start there. And so anyway, you know, well done on what you've done so far. We'll continue, and thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me, and we'll be talking.
Yeah, he's got style, and he's right by the world. He needs some strong coffee to help him get through the day. Strong coffee to help him get through the day. He calls it first quarter